So we'll start at the very beginning and discuss the importance of a language learning schedule. But first we need to ask ourselves, why should we even bother making a language learning schedule, or what's it for? What even is it? A language learning schedule basically just helps people to stay on track towards their goals in a language learning journey towards fluency, if that's what you're aiming for. Because when beginning a language, it's really easy to get lost in it and get really into it, never get bored of it. To ensure that you stay on this path and you stay learning the language, you need to make it a routine. You need to make it a habit. If you achieve this, language learning will not feel like a burden or chore. It'll help you stay on track and keep you consistent, which, if you have watched my 10 tips for language learning, it's tip number 2 is consistency. And this is crucial in language learning because, simply put, the more practice you get, the more progress you'll get. Now that that's out of the way, I want to briefly introduce myself. Hey guys, my name is Kyle and I make language learning videos such as this one, and this one. If any of these interest you, you can consider subscribing down below or checking them out, and they'll be in the description box below. Now onto the heart of this video, some factors you need to consider when making your own language learning schedule and how to make it. The very first thing you need to consider is what type of schedule are you going to make? By that I mean, are you going to plan out a month in advance, 3 months in advance, a week in advance, just a day in advance? Like, what are you going to plan out? I would suggest making longer term goals, like in the 3 months, 6 months, year goals, just main overall goals of what you want to achieve in that time, but not to plan out and schedule in detail what you want to cover every single day throughout that extensive period of time. It's just hard to know what will happen and what will come up, and this could disrupt your schedule and make you feel more behind. What I do suggest though is to roughly plan out a month in advance, but then every Sunday go through in detail what you want to cover for the coming week. This works for me, but feel free to experiment about the time frames and everything you want to use yourself, because it is a personal thing to do, structuring your language schedule around your own habits and your own daily life. What works for me may not work for you, and vice versa. The next thing to consider is how much time do you have available to you to study, whether it be an hour a day, half an hour a day, or 15 minutes a day. It is up to you to choose. Not only how long each day, but how many days of the week are you planning to do this? This can be flexible though if something comes up during the week that I want to switch or prioritize something else or anything like that. It's not set in stone, and I don't suggest you set everything in stone because that can be kind of stressful. Just have a rough idea how many days a week you want to study, and let's see if that works for you first. So by starting with 3 or 4 days a week for half an hour is a good starting point to see if that's something you can fit into your schedule, something you can make a habit out of, and if it becomes too easy or you want to push yourself harder, just bump up the numbers. One big tip I have for you all, whether it's just one person watching or thousands of people watching, is to not do more than 35-ish minutes of active study at any one time. Whether this be reading, writing, translating, limit yourself to about 35 minutes of active study, because past that, it just won't be as effective. Your brain won't absorb the information as easily, etc., etc. I have mentioned this before, and I will likely mention it again and again and again, and that is, you need to find ways to actually incorporate the language into other aspects of your day. Say there's 16 hours a day that you're not asleep in. That's probably about average. You study for half an hour a day, active study for half an hour a day. That's 15 and a half hours still left in your day that you're not using your language. Now consider how children learn. They have no language, they are surrounded by it every single day for all of their days, and they pick it up. An ideal language learning environment is to replicate that as best as you can with the knowledge you now have as an adult or as an older person. So you can use your active study time to learn the language as an adult by learning the grammar, because we learn that better than children, learning vocab. In the time that you're spent away from actively studying the language, you need to find things that you can do to incorporate the language yet still. So during this time, I would consider incorporating the language into other tasks. So you can listen to music in the target language. You can listen to podcasts while on the bus or on your walk. You can turn your phone into your target language so that you're looking at that every single day, however many times you look at your phone each day. And if you look up something on Google, perhaps try looking up in the language you're learning rather than your native language. These are all just things you can do to increase your exposure, which will help you learn the language so much faster than you thought you could ever do. It is something that will separate the people who will learn the language and people who say the language is too hard to learn. So once you have sorted how long you're going to study a language and for how many days you're going to study the language per week, you need to think of the activities you're actually going to do during your active sessions. Examples of these activities can include reading a book or a short story, studying some grammar structures, memorizing vocab, translating songs, listening to a podcast and the transcription at the same time and looking up words you don't know, writing a journal entry, doing some exercises in a textbook that you own, watching a TV show in your target language with subtitles in the same language. But yeah, those were the ones I could come up with right now. If you have any more suggestions, you can leave them in the comments below for people to read so we can help each other out and learn the language that we want. Okay, so let's get into my own language learning schedule now. I'll make a video if you guys want, let me know in the comments about how I make a language learning schedule for multiple languages and how to maintain them. Currently, I'm learning 6 languages in 2021. So my plan will look a little bit different than yours. However, the structure should stay the same, just the languages you're learning may just be the 1 or the 2. So I'm going to go over to my computer now and show you on Notion how I plan my languages. And you can see the overall calendar of the month of March. And you can see the different days in March with a different language assigned to that day. So my priority at the moment is in German and second priority is Irish. So these are the things that you're going to see most often when it comes to my language learning in the month of March. These priorities change and develop, and the language that I slot in throughout the week that are different to these priorities will also change. Kind of complicated, but I have a system down. Again, if you want me to tell you all and teach you how I do it and how I think it works best, then just let me know in the comments and I'll make a future video on this. Okay, so Monday is to learn some Deutsch, some German. To do this, I review some old stories and I read and analyze a new story. These stories are from the app Link. I made a video on why I think this is one of the best language learning apps that I'm currently using. I'll link it up here. This is what I do to study all of the language basically I'm using except for Irish because it's not on that app. Within this section of going through the stories, I analyze any new vocab I didn't know before, and if I try to notice some grammar structures that I've learned previously. Next, I watched 2 YouTube videos on the channel Learn German. Currently going through the A2 course that is there, just amazing. Some passive things I do throughout the day is listen to music, and any day that is German related, I turn my phone into the German language. Tuesday is Irish or Gaeilge. I listen to a podcast throughout the day. Again, this is something passive I do. I also do 30 minutes, 35 minutes of a course that I bought. And this is basically where I go through grammar structures. It's really detailed and difficult, but very useful. Wednesday I've set aside for French. And in the mornings I will go through a podcast of Inner French and read the transcriptions along. Again, on the app Link. By doing this, I'll highlight any grammar structures that are interesting to me, some new vocab that I learned, etc. Then in the evenings, I usually have a call with a friend who is also learning French, and we do this for about an hour, just practice and talking and speaking and just chatting. Thursday is German again, and I write a journal entry, or I try to write a journal entry on a random topic that I just think of on the moment. I post it to journally.com. Again, a website that I have mentioned in the past, free this time, where you post things and native speakers can correct them. Once it's corrected, I will go through it, whether that be the same day, the next day, a week later, whenever it is, I'll go through it then. Friday is Irish again, and I read some of the books I own in Irish. Currently reading Charlie and the Chocolate Factory in Irish. I don't typically read enough in Irish. That's something that I'm trying to improve on. Saturday is Chinese, Dongwen. Again, I review some old stories on Link. I also go through some of the HSK4 vocab. Basically, I make flashcards with the word that I'm trying to learn, a sentence using the word, and the translation on the back. Probably the best way to use flashcards in my opinion. Then I do some grammar study using YouTube. I usually do these HSK4 grammar structure review videos on YouTube. And if I'm feeling up to it, I write a brief thing on journally.com in Chinese and again, study it and analyze it when it's corrected, whenever that will be. Sundays, as I mentioned before, are my chill day. I don't do any language stuff. I don't want to stress about any of that. I will, however, plan out the next week. Really doesn't look different than the week prior. Just the stories that I'll review are different, the stories I'll read are different, but the same structure generally applies. One thing I forgot to mention though is when I'm going through these stories, I will read them out loud, and on Link there is a speaker option where the audio is played out in a native speaker's voice so that you can practice your pronunciation and listening skills as well. So it's kind of an all-rounded approach to learning languages that I really like. I hope this video was useful and you enjoyed it, and hope that now you have a better understanding of how to structure your own language learning schedule. If you did enjoy, you can leave a like down below and consider subscribing to the channel. I will see you next week for a new video. In the meantime, you can check out these videos that will appear on your screen now.